Hi there. I am the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I'm offering this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, for the soul. And it's titled God of My Own Understanding and some thoughts on Father's Day. So I've been thinking about fathers. I've been obviously thinking about my own dad and many complex memories, really. Died a long time ago. And when my dad was very ill towards the end of his life, he told me many things. Some made sense, some did not. Some obviously was on some strong medication. Some hurt, some beautiful. But one thing that sticks in my mind, that's always stuck in my mind, I can almost picture him telling me this tale as he laid there, actually. We were talking about spiritual things. He wanted to know me and what I believed and or didn't believe. And when I'm not sure about things, I don't tend to say much. So he started to tell me a story. He liked to tell stories. A bit like me, I'm a storyteller, really, aren't I? Anybody that knows me, and maybe I got that from him. Who knows? But he recounted a tale when he was once at Appleby Horse Fair, or Appleby Horse Fair, as my granddad would have called it, a place where he and his dad were probably at their closest, their happiest, a place he loved. Certainly, it was his happy place. It was his kind of nirvana, his Ithaca, his place where he was felt free and he could truly be himself. But even then, it may well have just been a version of himself. But my dad was talking to me about faith, about God that day. Well, perhaps he wanted to pass something on to me. And it was during a time in my life when I didn't really believe in anything, certainly no religious or spiritual beliefs, certainly didn't believe in God, but I didn't believe in much, really. I was quite nihilistic, really, very disappointed in life, in a dark place. He knew that. So he told me this story. He told me about a priest, that he saw a priest on a bridge, staring down into the water. He approached the man and asked the priest what he was doing. The priest told him that he was staring into God's eyes. So my dad obviously looked into the water and he said he could only see himself and the priest, of course, just the two men staring down into the water. At which point the priest replied to him that this is where God dwells. God dwells within you, within me, within everyone, within everything. God is present in everything, but you see God in you and in me. It obviously had a powerful impact. It stayed with me. Now, I don't know if this actually happened, if my dad was just telling me a story that somebody else told him, or whether the priest was telling him this and it's something that he'd come up with himself or something he'd read or learnt about. I don't know whether they actually happened or not. I've no reason to doubt, to not believe it happened. But I have heard similar versions of this story over the years. Here's one I came across a while ago. A little girl was standing with her grandfather by an old-fashioned open well. They had just lowered a bucket to draw some water to drink from. The girl asked her grandfather, "Where does God live?" The man picked up the little girl and held her over the open well, and he said, "Look down into the water and tell me what you see." The little girl looked and then replied, "I see myself." And the old man said, "Well, that's where God lives. He lives in you. He lives in you. He lives in me. He lives in everything." That's what my dad told me. That's what the priest told him, apparently. It's what they saw in the water. What do you see when you look into the water? Now, whether this story my dad told me 30 years ago actually happened or did not happen doesn't really matter to me. It's classic mythos, isn't it? As it teaches a universal truth, and it's a truth that has grown in meaning, depth, and understanding and experience as the years have gone by. It has stayed with me. It has survived my darkest days. Perhaps it kept me going through my darkest days, and it kept on resurfacing, and it feels very strong right now. The ghost of my father still haunts me. Does yours haunt you? Now, like most people, my dad was a ball of contradictions, a mixture of many, many things. He could be a different man in a split second. And when I think of him, I think about those beautiful and wonderful words of Walt Whitman. Do I contradict myself? Very well then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. The ghost of my father is a complicated one, as all grief and all love is complicated. It contains multitudes. When I think about my dad, it's hard to imagine him as being younger than I am now when he died. He was 47 when he died. I'm 51 now. And sadly, there were periods during my childhood when we were estranged from one another. But I was with him at the end for those last couple of years of his life. But I don't know if I ever really knew him. Those memories, my memories of him, are complicated. They contain multitudes of contradictions. They form and reform as time goes by. I've been revisiting, reliving, re-experiencing, remembering things that just weren't there these last 2 or 3 years. Grief does that, It brings things to the surface, stuff that's buried and hidden. And no doubt it will continue for the rest of my life, as it will for yours, actually. All I have of my dad are memories and a few photographs. Oh, and I've also got these lines on my forehead and these eyes. These lines are part of a legacy, I guess, that he had to. Although I do remember when the day that he died and seeing him, he died moments before I saw him. And I went into the room in my grandma's lounge where he was, where they'd moved him for those last few weeks and months. He'd just died minutes before, and I saw him and I approached him and I saw his face and I saw his forehead, and all the lines and all the stress and all the pain had gone. I kissed him lightly. Only really not witnessed, only been close to one or two people who died, and powerful memory too of my dad. So I still have these lifelines, I suppose they are, on my forehead and these eyes. I'm not going to grow a moustache despite people putting pressure on because of my choice of summer shirts at the moment, wanting me to look like Magnum. A moustache is not for me, but it was part of who my dad was. Now, my biological dad was not the only paternal figure I had in my life growing up. There were many, and they too contained multitudes. Most are no longer here. My mum's second husband, my stepdad, the father of most of my children, my stepdad when I was a child, the man who brought us up, who from the age of about 3, really. He died during COVID. He was the father of many of my siblings, and I'm making an understatement to say that he was not the easiest man to live with. A nightmare. And yeah, a nightmare. Not just for me, for anybody. As I say, he died during COVID, and I conducted his funeral primarily for my sisters and my brother and the others who make up this complicated family, this layers of multitudes of complications and contradictions. And during the funeral, and actually after his death, I went through a really, really difficult time as I relived a lot of painful memories, actually, difficult memories, trauma, actually, real trauma, childhood trauma. I relived multitudes of it, actually. And this complicated grief brought a whole load of memories to the surface that took quite some time to heal through. Yes, those ghosts contain many multitudes. Grief contains many multitudes, and grief is a powerful, powerful, lifelong journey, actually. I don't feel that I feel I've healed through it though, and it's brought other memories to it. And actually, in the year that followed, other childhood memories came back about my own father and times, complicated times too. But a loving hand has guided me through that. I felt that God that I learnt of, that is in within me and within everything and within everyone, helped me come through that, be the man I am today, with treasure to share. Now, no doubt days like Father's Day can bring up many memories for all of us. Many wonderful memories, but others that are painful too. My mum has been married to a wonderful man, Greg, these last 25 years. It's their silver wedding anniversary this July. It should be a great party, a great do. And of course, I'll be thinking of Greg today on Father's Day, who lost his son Daniel, my stepbrother, in tragic circumstances a few years ago. And I'm also going to be thinking this year, particularly of my Uncle Barry and my Uncle Brian, who have lost children in the last 12 months, cousins of mine. Fathers and other fathers who are mourning the loss of children. Yes, we all mourn those lost, but it must be particularly hard for fathers who have lost children on Father's Day. How could be more painful, really? Their grief must contain multitudes. I'll be thinking of them. Good two maternal figures that certainly loved me and still love me throughout my life. People who, when they see me, just smile. People who I feel a calm, loving presence around. Wonderful men, actually. But they contain not perfect, they contain multitudes too. But I'll be thinking of my Uncle Barry, and thinking of my Uncle Brian, and thinking of Greg, all three men who have lost children. I was shown a great deal of paternal love from many sources throughout my life, all by flawed individuals, but who loved in their own way. Perhaps and many who found it hard to show who they really were, are something I can relate to. Again, all of us we can relate to that, one of those wonderful words of Whitman. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. So many lives have touched my life, as I too have touched many other lives. I carry many, many legacies with me, not just these lines. Legacies I will continue to pass on. And one of those legacies is that story that my dad told me on his deathbed, really, or close to close to the end. Something that stayed with me, that's grown in me in meaning as the years have gone by. It helped me relate and connect. Not only that, but in some way it helped me finally connect to that loving guiding spirit at the core of everything, including the core of me, that I call God. But God can be a difficult word for many, many people. Certainly within my tradition, it can mean many, many different things for each and every one of us. We come to our own conclusions. Unitarians are encouraged to do that. Unitarians celebrate the diversity of our own understandings, especially around spiritual matters, around all aspects of life, really. We contain multitudes. Some people I know have abandoned the whole idea of God, have rejected the word entirely, a kind of spiritual or religious humanists, I guess, is the best way of describing them. And others have abandoned old ideas around God for new ones, new, more liberating ones. So when folk within my Unitarian tradition speak of God, it is a God of their own understanding. And it may well be very different for each individual. I'm sure it's not that different, but we come to our own conclusions. We celebrate this. We celebrate the diversity of understanding and experience. And we want to know how people come to theirs, what they actually mean. I want to hear about it. I want to hear the multitudes of diversity. And maybe it contradicts at times. Well, life contradicts itself. as we contradict ourselves. We are large, we contain multitudes, all of us, everyone. But God means something to me now, and it's a word that grows actually in meaning as time goes by. It doesn't get smaller, it gets larger. And maybe there are more contradictions because of this. When I think of God, I do not think of a paternal figure. No, that's it to me. When I rejected Father Christmas when I was about 6, although I kept that quiet for 5 years. And in fact, I don't see God as a figure at all, as male or female, non-binary of any gender really. But I think of an essence. It's in body, so it's kind of embodied in that sense. But it's not restricted by body, by physical form. It's spirit, if you like, although that just seems inadequate. It's large, it contains multitudes, but no doubt it contradicts. And life sometimes makes me question what I think, which is beautiful, actually. But I get back to the experience in the core of my being, where fear is, so is love, in the same place. So my dad's legacy to me is that story. It stayed with me all these years, and when I began exploring spiritual things once again, the story came back to me, helped me make sense. When I think of God, this mythos that my dad told me makes sense. That's why when I first heard Forest Church's phrase, God is not God's name, God is our name for that power that is greater than all and yet present in each, that made sense to me. It echoed something deep in my own heart. And that's also why ideas around process theology spoke to me, and ideas around panentheism, never to be confused by pantheism. It's different to pantheism. It's not that God is everything, it's that God is in everything and yet more than everything. Panentheism. This panentheism speaks to me, chimes something deep in my soul, my experience. It speaks of an essence that is somehow more than life and yet is present in all life, including you and me, drawing us on and on, but not controlling everything. Radical free will exists. Some have described this as the lure of divine love, drawing us on as we turn toward that love, as we turn towards life. The love that can never leave us, although we can leave it, but we can easily turn back again. The characteristics of this essence, if you like, are both male and female, and yet way, way beyond the limits of gender, beyond the limits of any kind of form. Yet God to me is neither he, nor she, or they, or them. God to me is the I am in everything, and yet more than everything. Yeah, the I am in everything. For me, God is a loving, encouraging essence that's in me and in everything. Something I know more when I'm in the company of others working for some good purpose. I feel it so intensely. I don't believe it sorts out the world, but when I live from this place of love, I'm better able to live in this world the way that I'm meant to live in this world, and to be a force of change for good in this world, as we can all be. I see God as a guiding encourager that helps me become the best that I can be, a loving, guiding, gentle power that is the essence of life. It is the lure of divine love. That's one way I like that phrase. Actually, it makes sense to me. It describes what I mean. It draws me on to live the life I can live when I live from love. And maybe actually this is an example. This lure of divine, this guiding, loving hand is an example of what a father ought to be. A gentle, guiding encourager. The ideal, I guess. Yeah. So I'm thinking of fathers and dads, and Father's Day brings me back to images of children, I think. Yeah, of little children. You see them in the parks, learning to ride or learning to swim. I remember with great fondness going to Morley Baths with my dad. Sure, all of us can remember when we first began to push those pedals on a bike, or when we first began to swim without armbands. Just how terrifying that those first feeling, exciting but terrifying. We would tremble in awe in that as we first let go for the first time. How terrifying it was to first do that, to first let go. I know how terrified I was anyway. And when you do so, you don't want the person guiding you to let you go. Your body, when you first let go, doesn't seem to work very well, especially if you think about riding a bike. You wobble, you start pushing the pedals and you wobble. And no doubt when you first start, we all fall over. How many times we wibble? Well, we're not quite weeble wobbles there. We do fall down, but we get back up again. And eventually we manage it. We break through, we break free, and we're guided to this as we do so. And once you've done it the first time, you can do it forever. Riding a bike, swimming, they say you never forget. Once you've done it, once you've broken through, you're free. I will never ever, I can feel it now, I will never ever forget the first time I successfully swam my first length. It wasn't at Morley Baths, it was at Dewsbury Baths actually, because we also had swimming lessons with school. And I remember the first time I swam my first length. I got out and I let out the biggest, loudest belch. I can't recreate it now. This incredible belch, the biggest, loudest belch I've ever done in my life. And I was thrilled to do so because I could swim. Finally, I could swim. Everything that I did physically in my life always took far too long. I was always a late developer in everything. But I was also a little shocked that I'd done it and that I'd swallowed. I felt like I'd swallowed half of the pool of water, pool in the swimming pool. Maybe I have, but I felt guided and encouraged to keep going, to get there in the end. And I think this guiding encouragement is one of the qualities of God, or at least the God as I understand God. Something every one of us can be, regardless of gender and form, because it's not limited by form. It's a moving, living, breathing spirit, a loving, guiding hand. No one amongst us is an island. No one lives completely by themselves, from themselves. We do nothing in life in isolation. Everything I know, everything I learnt was in cooperation with others and with that loving spirit, it seems. I have learned that both visible and invisible help is always at hand. Encouragement is there to guide us through these fears until we can trust ourselves. And then we pass this on, this same wisdom to others, thus bringing the I am in everything to life for others. Father's Day is about honouring those who have guided us, encouraged us, and held us when life seemed too scary. Those who gave us the faith to trust in ourselves, to trust in life, and those who taught us that the divine presence is always with us. They may not have been our biological fathers, they may not have been men, but we should honour them all. Those that offer that loving guidance, that encouragement, regardless of gender, whoever they are. But today's Father's Day, and today we honour them. None of them were perfect. And to truly honour them actually as they actually were is to recognise their imperfection actually. Just as to honour ourselves is to recognise and love who we are, warts and all, and beauty spots too. And beauty spots too. So may we pay homage to them on this special day set aside for them. But may we pay homage to them in all their contradictions, for they, like ourselves, contained multitudes. Amen. I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know we need to bless more, and we can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So, may love permeate our every heartbeat. May faith guide our every step. May truth and compassion be our eternal travelling companion. and may a deep, abiding spirit rest joyously in our every waking wish and our ever-resting dream. And may the love of God be with us and in us, and guide us, and hold us, and sustain us, and encourage us, and may it do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.